Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Osteoporosis Canada's webinar. Before we begin, Osteoporosis Canada acknowledges the land that our offices, located in Toronto, are on, is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. My name is Tracie Napoli, Director of Fund Development and MARCOM at Osteoporosis Canada, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar, Eat Well on a Budget. This webinar will provide general information about cooking and food knowledge. It is not intended as individualized health or nutrition advice. So if you have any questions, we encourage you to speak to a healthcare provider or a registered dietitian. We also want to thank our partner, Canada Beef, for providing their support for this presentation. Now, during the webinar, if you have questions or comments related to the topic, we invite you to click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen or enter the comments in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can during the webinar within the time available. As always, we will be recording the webinar and it will be available on the OC Replay webpage. As you've registered, you will be receiving the replay tomorrow in your inbox. Nutrition, we always say this, it's a key component for strong and healthy bone and muscle, as well as in the prevention and management of osteoporosis. And Osteoporosis Canada is working to provide strategies, new ideas, and develop recipes to help you get the nutrients needed for good health. When planning and preparing meals, we recommend getting the 5 recommended nutrients daily that all play an important role: calcium, vitamin D, protein, magnesium, and vitamin K. And whenever possible, to get nutrients through food sources when possible. However, what if you can't get those nutrients through food sources? What if access to food sources are limited? People are struggling with the increase in grocery prices, and many individuals are facing higher levels of food insecurity, facing inadequate or uncertain access to nutritious and culturally appropriate food. So today we're going to discuss the choices we can make in the grocery store and in the kitchen to access the high quality foods needed for good overall health. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter for today, our friend Emily Richards, who's a professional home economist, freelance food writer, chef, and she is the author and co-author of 11 cookbooks. Emily also writes and develops recipes for print and online publication that include everyday cooking and healthy eating, and she can be found on TV, radio, and webcasts just like this one. So please welcome Emily. Hi, Emily.
Hey, Tracie. How are you?
Good. How are you? It's a little bit different what we're doing today.
It
Normally,
is.
we're sharing a recipe and we're doing some cooking, but we've got so much great information to share with everyone. And as you can see, Emily has lots to show and tell us as well.
I feel like I'm in grade school and I get to do a little show and tell. But the great part is that there isn't a test at the end.
Yes.
And you can ask lots of questions, which is what will kind of keep us going. And Tracie and I hope to cover lots of information, topics, but we also want you to share as well. So if there's something that you're doing and you want to let us know, put it in the chat, or if you have some questions, and then hopefully we'll get to answer some questions along the way.
Absolutely. Now, there may be a lot of information that we're sharing, and this is why it's such a great thing that we're going to record this. You'll be able to go back and, review or watch it again if you wish. So no pressure. We've got a bunch of information we're going to share, and we're gonna start. So I'm going to share back some slides, and then we're even going to have you answer some poll questions because we want to learn about you. So here we go. So the first part is about some tips and suggestions to stay on budget. So there's meal planning. When you plan your week, it assists in making good choices for bone and overall health. and it reduces the amount of food waste. It saves money. There's so many ways you can try to get a good deal and find things that perhaps you've been waiting to purchase, and now all of a sudden they're on sale. Check a weekly flyer or an in-store special. There are apps. There's ways to make lists for what you need. And we also want to reduce food waste. And of course, cooking at home. And this is why we do a lot of our cooking programs, is so that you can control exactly what you're spending, what you're eating, and the nutrients you're getting. So, Emily, do you have any comments on any of this?
I have lots.
You
I have
have,
lots
I
of
know you do.
comments.
That's why I
I
asked.
actually, so I normally, those of you that have joined us before, if when I'm cooking, I have the recipe in front of me. So I have 2 pages of notes, Tracie. I have lots to say.
Oh, all right.
But hopefully, we'll get through everything. But I do want to point out, because we're talking about meal plans, and this doesn't have to be a difficult thing. I thought I'd do a little show and tell right off the get-go. This is just a simple monthly calendar that you can print off. You can get it online, print it off, and you can just write things in here. I usually do 4 months at a time. I don't meal plan 4 months at a time, but I'm also including other things like when someone's not going to be here, or if I need somebody else to get groceries or something like that, just to kind of help with the whole kind of family. In our house, there's 5. So we have a household of 5 that I expect everybody to participate in some shape or form. And so these types of organization things really, really help. Making a list for the grocery store. I love the grocery store. If I could live in a grocery store, I probably would. And I love spending time there, but I don't go into the grocery store without my list. And so this is my list. This is a little book that I have. And you can see I've scratched out a lot of things because I've done a lot of shopping, but it's a great tool to have a list of what you need. But also, I take this and go to my refrigerator, my freezer, my pantry, and see what I need or what I have, so that it is a tool to help me out. And I was actually flipping through here, Tracie, to see if I had any interesting notes. And I flipped back far enough that I was researching some honey. And so I wanted to get kind of a good price. So I actually have here different brands of honey and how big the container was. And these are little things that can kind of help you along the way. And if you aren't ready to kind of dive into something like this at the grocery store, guess what? You can do it all online. So you can actually sit at your computer and, do that kind of the cost comparison of different grocery stores. So I definitely believe in these types of things. And I also leave this book out so that other family members can actually write down things too. So it's not just me. If something gets, eaten and we run out of it, they can add to this list too.
That is, Emily is so organized. So let me just say this. Not everyone maybe is going to be as organized as Emily and have like that awesome book. I have a notepad always in the kitchen, and I do make notes. I'm someone who's very much, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So I have to leave a notepad out to do all of that. Otherwise, I will go to the grocery store, and if I'm hungry, I will make poor choices because I'm looking there and I'm like, I've got to get in and get out. And sometimes it's not always the most economical choice. So you really want to plan. But we're going to find out about what your habits are. We're going to have a couple of poll questions. So Roy's our web manager, and he's in the back end here. Roy, pop up the first poll, please. So it's, do you do a meal plan for the week? Yes, no, or sometimes. So everyone, oh, look at the numbers. It's like the lottery.
This is truth be told. That's what this
It is.
is.
Oh, this is so great. Oh, we've got almost everyone who's answered. Yeah, I think we're good. Let's see. So we do have people, we have like 18% that yes, they do a meal plan. No, 42%. Sometimes when we think about it, when we remember, we have about 40%. So that's great. We have one more poll question right now. So the next question is, Do you have a grocery budget? Who has a grocery budget? They actually allot so much money just for groceries. This
That
is
can be
so
that can
fascinating to
that can
see.
be that can be a tricky one.
I
And it
know.
really depends on a lot of things. Sometimes if it's just that you're kind of budgeting for your family for the week, but maybe you're having a party and you need to kind of adjust that budget. So
Yeah.
sometimes, or you have a budget just for those special things. There's lots of ways to look at this too. So
So
this
we
is a
have,
nice general question.
it is, and it's 21% yes, no 68%, sometimes 12%. So that's really interesting. I also find that maybe that budget, I'm just going to stop sharing that. Roy, we're good. We can lose that. We can lose the screen here. Um, I think the other part is that depending sometimes on when you get paid in a month, maybe your budget is going to be different towards the end of a pay before you get paid versus at the top end of your budget. So maybe you purchase different things at different times of the month or the pay cycle. So there's that. Let's talk about, Emily, before we go into things, because we get a lot of questions on expired and best before dates, which I think impacts um, budget. So this is from the Government of Canada. This is from the Inspection Agency, Health Canada, all those nice titles. This is what a best before date, they're not the same, is versus an expiration date. A best before date, it's not an indicator of food safety, neither before nor after the date. You can buy and eat foods after a best before date has passed. It just may impact some freshness, flavor, nutritional value. But it only applies if you're purchasing to unopened products only. So if you've only unopened it, or even at home, if you've opened something, it will change the life expectancy. Now, an expiration date is completely different. It's not the same. It should not be bought, sold, or eaten if the expiration date has passed. So it should be discarded. So there's that. Emily, do you have any comments
Um,
on that?
I do. And I think a lot of the times when we are going into the grocery store, and myself included, you see things that are reduced, and it's typically because they're kind of inching towards that expiration, or sorry, their best before date. And so what ends up happening is they reduce the price of it, which, that's great because that's value to us. So I'm going to I'll use yogurt as an example, okay, just because it's here in front of me. So let's say that I went to the grocery store and this yogurt was reduced 50% or 40%. And this is a great deal. I'm going to go home and bring it home. What am I going to do with it? That's the question. And that's where kind of this whole budgeting comes into play, because I can go to the grocery store with my list. I know what I need and I'm going to get it. But there's things that could pop up that are a great deal. And I know Tracie's always up for a good deal. And many of us are, because we want to be able to, reap those rewards and have those wonderful deals. But there does have to be a plan in place, unless that you feel comfortable that you can have that creativity in the spur of the moment. Many of us have phones when we go to the grocery store. So I'm going to point out I had a great deal on some zucchini here, $3 for a bag, just various zucchini. And I picked it up because I want to make zucchini relish. So I right away knew that that's something that I wanted to do. So in the store, in the moment, when I saw that, that triggered me to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. But if you pick it up and then take it home and leave it in your crisper and just kind of let it slide and forget about it, that's where that food waste comes in. And then it really doesn't help your budget or your bottom line. So whereas if you take that zucchini and you can slice it up and start adding it to stir fries and soups, or maybe you're going to make a zucchini loaf, and then you can kind of build on that. That's really where those best before dates we kind of have to think about. And yogurt's a great one. If there's a best before date on it, it's getting close to it, or even after it. I love making things like quick breads, muffins. You can incorporate into that. Or if there's a recipe that calls for sour cream, you can use yogurt, provided it's plain typically, unless you're making a fruit bread and you have a fruited yogurt. Now that's also to say, just on the nutrition front, take a look at the nutrition of it too, and if it's going to fit what you need. So this is just a plain Greek yogurt that can be added to many different things. But if you get, let's say, a vanilla yogurt where you're looking at sugars and those types of things, make sure that it fits your nutrition needs as well. For our purposes, we definitely want that protein and we want to have that calcium. So in a lot of the recipes that we have on osteoporosis, we definitely could use that in a lot of recipes, don't you think, Tracie?
Absolutely. And you know what? Like I'm someone who, so for the zucchini, if I was looking at that bag, I would make, because I make a zucchini bread. Very big fan of that, which I also put grated carrot and apples. But also
Yum.
I would make a zucchini soup if, but zucchini relish, like there's lots of different things you can do. We did get some questions. I'm just going to quickly, somebody asked, so you're only going to get, let's talk about expiry and best before. You're not going to get both dates. Is that right, Emily? You're going to get either a best before date or an expiry date on a product, or would you get both?
Typically. No, in my
Yeah,
kind of shopping, I haven't seen both on a product.
right.
And typically those expiration dates I've seen on a lot of products when I used to buy baby formula, for example, and those types of things. I don't have to buy that anymore, thankfully. But I'm just taking a look here. I have this one's April 1st, 2025. So this is a long ways away. If I take a look at a fresh product here, so so there's two dates on typically fresh products and things like that. So this one has a packaged on date, which is February 23rd, and then it's best before February 26th. Well, the 26th, what day is that? That was yesterday. I'm not panicking. You shouldn't panic either. So these things like this, they're fresh vegetables. You can take a look. You can see the carrots. They're a little bit discolored. They might be a little bit soft, but there's ways to incorporate them. Things like this, especially prepared foods, if you go to the grocery store later in the evening when they're trying to kind of get rid of some of those prepared foods, they're discounted. You can incorporate them into different recipes. So that might give you an opportunity. When I see something like this, I think of vegetable soup or roasted vegetables or stir fries, and I don't have to cut the vegetables. So that speeds things up. And I've also saved some time and money because of the price reduction, which is really nice. So there is different things. This one, I'll check this one is best before February 27th. Okay, but it was reduced already. So this is just a little bit of a bruschetta mix. So chopped tomatoes, garlic, parsley, those types of things. So I will probably cook this tonight and make a little bit of a sauce with it as opposed to eating it raw because it's kind of sitting in a little bit of acidity. The tomatoes are going to get a little bit of softer texture as opposed to their nice firm ripe texture. So cooking them will reduce it a little bit more. And then this would be great. I could make a little bit of a cooked salsa. I could serve it over fish. This would be great to serve it over some grilled meat if you wanted to, or you could add it to a soup. So it's kind of getting that wheel going. And this is where the inspiration of cookbooks, online recipes, maybe friends and family that have, made something or using leftovers, you really kind of have to pull from everybody and take notes, write things down, or take pictures. If you see something that you want to recreate, take a picture of it if it's a recipe that you've seen and you want to remember that. You can walk away from that. Does that kind of cover best before?
Yeah. I have one, actually, I have a really good question. A couple people have asked this, and then we're going to move along because we have so much information to get through today. So if you buy a best before product and you can freeze it, it's good to freeze, but then when you defrost it, what's the shelf life?
So it depends on what we're talking about here. So I often see meat that is reduced, and the best before date, let's say, was today. So I can come home and cook it if I wanted to and eat it. I could come home and freeze it, or I could come home, cook it, and then freeze it. So you have a few different options there. It depends on what exactly that product is. So like for these vegetables, the longer they sit, they're going to start to wilt. They're going to start to get soft and things like that. So if I know that I'm not going to use these within a couple of days, I can pop them in the freezer. So if you have an airtight container or a resealable bag, you can throw them in the freezer. I have family members that take this and just throw the whole thing in the freezer because, they don't have time to deal with it, but they really wanted this because it was reduced. They know they're going to use those vegetables and they just want to get it into the freezer. So there is a little bit of longevity. So once it comes out of the freezer, you don't want to just take it out and not know what to do with it. That's kind of, a plan that you need to have. And that's, again, I know for meal planning, and there's two ways to look at this meal plan, by the way. Meal planning for some is cooking a bunch of stuff, packaging it out, and then putting it in the refrigerator. There's that type of meal plan, but there's also the meal plan that involves putting recipes in place and deciding when you're going to make them, if there's going to be leftovers, are you going to incorporate them? Is it going to be lunch? So it does take a little bit of time to kind of organize that, which I think is a perfect Sunday afternoon activity. Sit at the table, grab yourself a tea or coffee, and then go through some cookbooks, one of my favorite things to do, and pick out some things. Have the family participate, or if you're inspired by seeing something, at a restaurant or in the grocery store, and kind of create your meals or your meal plan based on those things. Make it fun, don't make it work, even though in the end it is work that you're going to benefit from. And if you have the opportunity, go hang out at the grocery store. Just walk around one afternoon. You don't stay there all afternoon because I think they'll question why you're there.
I'm
But
laughing because Emily's like, just go hang out at the grocery store, hang out by the produce section,
so
because
grab yourself a coffee, like a
you
takeout
go.
coffee, bring your water and your notebook and take notes. Take notes of things. You don't have to actually buy anything that day. Just see, are there products that you want to try out? Are there great sales on certain things? And then this is a great way to then base your shopping list on, because now you know what? I used to buy this brand, but I think this brand is pretty similar and nutritionally it meets the needs that I'm looking for. Whether you are, you want to build bone strength, you need some more calcium, you're looking, if you have a diabetic family member, there's all these things to take into consideration. And you don't want to do that when you're running into the store because you forgot something. And now all of a sudden, you're frazzled because you just have to get it. And then it might not be the right fit to what you're looking for. Sorry, that was a really long answer to
No, it
that.
was a really good answer, though. It was a really good answer. And you know what? We have so many good comments and questions coming in. And so I'm just going to say this before we continue. We get people telling us all the time, I'm not interested in cooking. I don't enjoy it. And I laugh because I'm thinking those people are watching this maybe saying, this is more work, Emily and Tracie. You're giving me more work. But really, what I would probably suggest is like, yes, if you're not used to doing all of this, it is a lot of information. Just start with one thing.
Yeah.
It's like anything in life. If you try to take this all on and like, reorganize the cupboards and, start like it's just too much. It's too much. So even if you just start meal planning or the budget part, and also a lot of different grocers carry different items. So maybe you have a rotation where you're like, this week I'm going to go shop for produce here because I like the produce. Or
Yeah.
dry goods are always a good price at this place. So nuts next week, or meats, etc., fish, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
just kind of like sometimes it's a bit of a plan. And actually, as Emily and I were preparing for this webinar, we said essentially like you got to do some homework. That there's no way around it. Like unless you
And
can remember everything, you have
yeah.
to do a bit of work and a bit of planning.
And I know that there's some people that are committed to their favorite grocery store, and that's great. But I don't want you to discount other grocery stores or other markets, farm stands, especially in season. There's a lot more farm stands that are now selling meat from their farms, and or other dairy products, produce in season.
Eggs, there's a lot of farm
Exactly.
fresh
A lot
eggs.
of farm
Yeah.
that you'll get farm fresh eggs. So really kind of consider that. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to start off that way. Don't kind of, just incorporate, as Tracie said, one thing at a time, because it can be really overwhelming. And when we're thinking about all the other things that are going on, not just in our lives, but outside that affect us, when you go to the grocery store, to me, that's kind of my like, I don't want any outside noise. I just want to focus on the grocery store and what I need to do, because to me, that's a happy place. And I want to continue that when I come home into the kitchen. And I want it to be something positive. I want it to be a positive experience. And that's what I hope to share with you, so that you, even if you don't like cooking, if you have to do a little bit of something, if you are picking up some meals that are already prepared, but you got a discount on them, like a great spaghetti and meatball that you found that was 25% off because you went in just before the store closed, and you can go home and, you know what? Tomorrow I didn't really feel like spaghetti and meatballs, but what if I took those meatballs, mashed them up, added a little bit of pasta sauce to it, and had a meat sauce with that spaghetti? Because that's what I feel like. It's those types of things that just kind of, you don't really have to do a lot of cooking, but you have the convenience there of that reduced item and that you are going to use it. Or you can make a frittata. I could go on because
We
like
could go,
there's
I know, and you know what? But guess where we're going next? Next, we are going to talk, we're going to go to the produce aisle.
perfect. Perfect.
I'm just gonna share where we're at here. Am I on the right slide? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. All right, produce tips. So you go in and there's lots of different options. Ways to get a good deal, obviously in season. That changes depending on what part of the country. For the most part, it's probably similar, but there are some variances probably. As Emily said, if you can buy local at local farmers markets, etc., sometimes you get really good deals, especially like at the end of a market day there where they just want to, get rid of what they've brought because they don't want to bring that back. And we're going to talk about like frozen fruit and vegetables, which I didn't actually make a note of, but canned as well. They can offer great value and great nutrition. Produce is harvested at its peak. If you're freezing it, it's flash frozen. The nutrition's there, the convenience is there, and you can often get such a good deal when it is on sale to keep in the freezer or on, in your pantry. And also, unless you're getting that 50% off or 30% off sticker, buying a whole produce item instead of pre-cut is is a better deal economically. Also, for what we just showed you, you can get that 50% off. Look for the discount stickers. Don't be afraid of discounted food. Just check the best before date and or the expiration date. And there we go. Now there's also something called, does anyone remember when the whole big ugly fruit and vegetable movement started? I do. There's a lot of actually press on this. And it can be found, when you go, there are quick sale racks for everything in the grocery store. There are quick sale racks for produce. Don't walk by it. Check it out. Just because it's got some blemishes or it's very ripe or maybe it's shaped a little funny, doesn't mean that it's not nutritious, that it's not good to eat. And often, especially with ripe fruit, you can make applesauce, pear sauce. You can freeze the bananas after you peel them. You can make tomato sauce if there's, extra ripe tomatoes. And Emily gave a great tip that you can actually bring a bit of a wilted lettuce back to life. And she's gonna talk about that. Um,
I actually did
but
that
yeah,
today.
let's do that.
I got, where is it? In here. So I went through because I needed some celery, and you know how sometimes the celery has been in there just a little too long, it's kind of wilted. So what I did was I cut it because I know this is a great little snack that everyone will have. And I actually just cut the celery into little sticks. So it was kind of like limp, but I just put it in some cold water and now it's standing at attention. So it's perfect. Okay, so I'll drain this, and then you can also do something like this and then just keep a little bit ready to go for, not just a snack, but if you're making a stir fry or a soup. The convenience of it is that it's already washed and ready to go and you can use it. What happened to all the other bits of that produce, all the celery leaves and the ends? there over here, I have this pot simmering away of stock. Um, and that's something that I often do. So any of the carrot peelings or the trimmings I have of onions, celery, parsley, for example, the stems, make sure they're washed first. And then all I do is I put them in a Ziploc bag, throw them in the freezer. And then when I have a bag full, guess what? It's time to make stock. You can make vegetable stock, or if you have some chicken bones, which I'm going to talk about too, you can add those in there and have a really flavorful stock. So it really is great to have all those different that kind of bits and pieces of produce available to you. So, this broccoli that I picked up, it's about 2 pounds for 250. It was in the reduced section. Perfectly great looking broccoli for stir fries. I can make a great broccoli soup. I could even just saute it and have it as a side dish. When it comes to frozen veggies, the price point is great. I buy bigger bags because I have 5 people in the house to feed. And what's great about it is all the different varieties that you can get. So this one is cauliflower, broccoli, and carrots. So great, again, for stir fries. If I wanted to roast this, because that's something that a lot of people don't enjoy about frozen, is sometimes it gets a little bit soft. So take it frozen, toss it with some oil, and put it in a really hot oven, like 425 or higher, and roast it. And you're going to get that nice kind of crispness on the outside that a lot of people really enjoy. You could do the same with frozen Brussels sprouts. You could even do it with frozen corn and make a delicious roasted corn soup, for example. Make it creamy by adding some milk and bump it up with some other things that I think are great pantry staples, like skim milk powder. Okay. So having that produce section available to you is fabulous. Tracie mentioned bananas. Have a plan for those bananas. If they're going into the freezer, that's great, but then don't keep stockpiling those bananas. Make smoothies, great for banana bread, great for pancakes, and add those in there. It's just a fabulous ingredient to add, but make sure that you do have a plan. So if you already have your stockpile of frozen bananas in the freezer, the great rule is FIFO, first in, first out. So make sure those bananas that you have in the freezer already come out first, and then you can kind of add to it with your other produce. You can also freeze a lot of that produce, okay? So the zucchini, if I know I'm making a zucchini soup like Tracie suggested, I would wash these, slice these, throw them in the freezer, and then maybe I'll make zucchini soup in a couple weeks, okay? Because it's going to get nice and soft and tender. I'm not really missing the texture of the zucchini. Same with other fruits and vegetables, okay? I'm going to put these back in the freezer.
Sounds good. And you know what? I'm just going through. You guys have so many good comments and questions. And so Anne actually said she just started meal planning and some basic food prep on Sundays. And she goes, it's made, she says, truly, it has made my weekly meals easier. And I think this is also easier on the budget. And she loves just being able to pull stuff out of the freezer because I'll tell you something. Here's a cost saving measure. You've had a day. Things are not going as planned. You didn't take anything out of the freezer to defrost. You're going and you're like, it's 8 o'clock and you have not had dinner yet. You're feeling like, I'm just going to go and order something instead of, being able to pull something out that you could just easily cook. You've made batch cooking, it's in the refrigerator. It's expensive to do takeout and to do, I mean, and not never. We all want to enjoy that, but like if you're in a regular habit because your schedule is unpredictable, a lot of money can go and be spent on stuff like that.
Definitely. And I think along that point is also to take the time. So you've made a meal plan, and if you are going to do batch cooking and you've now brought everything home, you have to make a time. You have to allot that time to do that batch cooking. And again, have a plan for it because we all have high hopes. And, if we don't kind of fulfill them, we get let down. And again, that's where food waste may come into play because now all of a sudden I have 3 pounds of, potatoes and I don't know what to do with them. I thought I was going to, make mashed potatoes or French fry, whatever that product might be that needs to get used up. The other thing along the lines of produce is sometimes there'll be pieces of produce that are reduced. as opposed to a whole one. But you really saw the price of that whole cabbage at 68 cents a pound, and you thought, I need that whole cabbage, which is great. But again, when you take it home, have a plan for it. If you don't, a way to accommodate your budget by having that is to look at other options. Like I always recommend coleslaw mix because that goes on reduced often. And it's already chopped for you. It has carrots and red cabbage as well as green cabbage. And it's a great replacement for shredded cabbage. You don't have to just use it for coleslaw. You can use it in stir fries and soups. You can even just add it to something for a nice bit of crisp freshness to it. And it's can fit your budget better if you're going to use it, right? So if I buy the biggest cabbage and it's $5 and the coleslaw that was, $1.99 reduced, you have to kind of weigh things out like that too. So kind of be aware of that kind of stuff, because if you're only cooking for one or two and you can't cut that cabbage because those cabbages can be hard to cut in half, you can put it in your food processor, but that coleslaw is already done for you. So there is that convenience too. And you see that a lot in these types of prepared foods as well. So if you have any wrist troubles and it's just difficult for you to cut, this might be a great option for you at the reduced price because you don't have to do as much work with it. Okay. Does that make sense? I hope so.
That does. And you know what? The common question we're getting from a lot of people. So this will be our last question on produce because we need to move on to pantry items after this. But a lot of the times I think people want to buy fresh herbs because fresh herbs can really bring out flavor in something maybe that was frozen or it was a pantry staple and you just want to make it taste a little bit fresh. They're also, I mean, just great in general. But what if you don't use the whole package of basil or rosemary or cilantro? How do you keep it without it going bad? And we've talked about this on previous cooking demos, and there's a
We
couple of
have.
ways, right?
There is. And some of them you can freeze. I always recommend to, if you can, purchase what you are going to use. So let's say a recipe called for fresh basil, and now fresh basil, you've paid $3 for that little package, that little bunch of basil, and you needed 1 tablespoon. Well, you know what? That recipe is not going to be worse if you add 3 tablespoons because the freshness will come out. But now I have that fresh basil and I want to use it. Maybe I'll make a little pot of tomato sauce and put some fresh basil in. Maybe I'll make a little bit of a soup and add some fresh basil in. Fresh herbs are there to kind of make us, I think, always feel like it's summertime and have that freshness. You could tear it up and add it to a pizza, even if it's a frozen pizza, and bake it so that you have that bit of freshness. Tear it on a plate of pasta and your pasta will be amazing. So if you incorporate those tender herbs, parsley, mint, basil, those types of herbs work really well because they tend to deteriorate quite quickly. Cilantro would be another one. But if you're looking at hardier herbs like rosemary and thyme, for example, they are a little bit more robust and they last a little bit longer and they're great in pretty much everything. So I use fresh thyme very often. Actually, I put some fresh thyme in the stock. I put it in when I'm roasting potatoes, when I'm cooking vegetables, when I'm roasting a roast, anything like that to add a little bit of flavor to it, even if the recipe doesn't call for it, because I think it's going to add that lovely bit of freshness. Rosemary is a little bit on the stronger side, so I tend to hold back on rosemary and use it for our heavier proteins, like a beautiful prime rib roast with rosemary would be absolutely amazing. But you can also dry some of those fresh herbs. Okay, so rosemary and thyme actually dry quite beautifully. I know my mom often will just pull the leaves off and let it dry at room temperature. You can even pop it in the microwave in short little increments to dry it out. Or you can just look to the dried herb alternates. Okay, so if you are, dried thyme is one of my favorite dried herbs to use, and you can replace it typically on a 3-to-1 ratio. So what that means is if the recipe called for a tablespoon of dried thyme, sorry, of fresh thyme, you would use a teaspoon of dried thyme. Okay, so it's just that 3-to-1 that you're using less of the dried and more of the fresh. Okay. So hopefully that covers our fresh herbs. And by the way, if you buy parsley, you can use that in everything. And it does freeze really well.
It
You don't
does.
even have to chop it. You could just freeze it, wash it, freeze it. And when you grab it, it just breaks apart and it's like you chopped it. It's perfect.
Exactly. And someone said you can also make pesto or sauces. You add a bit of oil, whichever oil you choose. You can keep it in the refrigerator. So there's lots of different uses. But now we're going to pivot because this is so many questions. But we're going to head over to talk about staples. And when we talk about staples, it doesn't just talk, we're just not talking about pantry staples. We're talking about freezer and refrigerator staples. Yes, there are things you want to keep in all three areas. This is when you want to really look out for those sales, those 2 for 1 or buy one, get one 50% off. The thing with these items are you don't need to buy everything at once. As you're shopping, if you happen to see, you could pick up an extra item. It's also, do you have the room? Do you have the space in your freezer? Do you have a space where you can keep, canned or jarred goods? And also, you don't want to be buying a lot of different things. If you can get a versatile item that like chopped tomatoes and or canned tomatoes or passata sauce, like you can make everything from an Italian dish to a curry dish to all different kinds of dishes because it's just tomatoes. It just comes in different forms. Um, Notoriously though, I have left things in a cupboard, and especially if you can't see at the back of the cupboard, and I have unfortunately let things expire. And this is where like you need to kind of go reach into the back of your cupboard, um, every once in a while and take things out and go, okay, this is what I'm cooking this week. That's my lesson learned. Now, for pantry items, and Emily did mention this, these are great items to have. Also, if weather's not good and you're looking at not wanting to go out, having powdered milk, evaporated milk, shelf-stable milk, or a fortified milk alternative. These are things that then you don't have to worry. You can kind of, keep them in the house, rotate them. So if they're coming close to being expired, use them up. And then maybe, if there's an opportunity, you can replace them. There's canned meats, there's canned fish. And I highlighted this one. We have lots of recipes on the website. Canned sardines and salmon with the bones. They're a source of both protein and calcium, especially when you eat the bones and you mash them up. And we have recipes where, you can't taste the bones. We safely mash them up and they're delicious. Beans are just such a great staple. Whether you buy them dried and you rehydrate them or they're canned, white beans, chickpeas, navy beans, so many nutrients, including protein and calcium. Nut butters, rice, pastas. There's so many grains, quinoa, farro, freaky, barley, polenta or cornmeal, oatmeal. These are such really great ingredients that you can actually use them both savory and sweet for a lot of these.
You totally can. And I think looking at when we talk about those things, the size of them is really important, Tracie,
Yes.
for sure.
If you're one or two people, are you going to buy a 5 kilogram bag because of rice because it's a great price? It's a lot of rice. If you're going to eat it, that's great. But like you have to think ahead and go, realistically, do I have a place to put it? Can I lift it? And am I going to eat it? So sometimes those deals for these huge packages or the double packages are not, they're just not worth the savings because you're going to end up maybe throwing it out. The other items for refrigerator items, as we talked about, milk, yogurt, cheeses, fortified beverages, eggs, and then freezer items, frozen fruit, vegetables, proteins, meats, ground beef, ground chicken, ground turkey. We're going to talk about that. Such a great ingredient. And cheese and milk. Yes, you can freeze these items and then stuffed pastas and pierogies. These are all really good opportunities to have food on hand. And I'm just checking here to see. All right, so we're good for right here. So Emily, everything that I just shared, let's talk about it. Look, she's got her stuff out. She's got
I
her
got some stuff out because I was
tools.
so proud of this deal. So in the pantry, it's not, as Tracie said, it's not just your cupboard. So it's not like these tomatoes. And by the way, if you only picked up whole tomatoes, okay, and the recipe calls for diced, that's okay. Just chop these tomatoes, right? You don't have to, or if it called for whole tomatoes, you can use diced tomatoes. There's a slight difference in the amount of tomatoes in the can, but the good part is that they're still tomatoes that you're using, okay? So maybe you got a deal on diced tomatoes and that's what you're going to use, and that's okay because it's going to offer up a wonderful bit of flavor. So when it comes to buying, these are red lentils that I love. They cook really quickly. They're great to add in baking as well as to make soups and burgers. You can extend that beef, that if you're making a ground beef burger, you can put a little bit of cooked lentils in there and extend it, offering up a little bit of fiber in there too, which is fabulous. Um, and again, I have a family of 5, so I have a lot of jars of things because I do buy larger bags to accommodate my family needs. But if it's easier for you to buy smaller amounts at the bulk store, for example, then that's what you should do so that you also have a nice fresh product. Like Tracie said, you don't want to buy that big bag of rice and then not be able to go through it. Okay. And then think of things a little bit differently. So oatmeal, okay, we often think of as something for breakfast, but you could make a delicious oatmeal bread, or you could also make a savory oatmeal and enjoy that, right? Think outside the box a little bit. We always think of breakfast for dinner, but sometimes you don't think across the board of all of those different ideas of breakfast for dinner. So when it comes to pantry in the fridge, cheese is something that I always have on hand. It's a great snack. It's great to add things. It's great to bind things, especially if you're making a frittata and you want to have that nice little bit of cheese or an omelet. Great quick dinner. So I'm so happy of this little deal I got. I went to the grocery store, and these are those grocery store deals that you don't find out about until you actually go to the grocery store. So this bag, it's a 320-gram bag of pizza shredded cheese blend. It was reduced to $1.96. So typically a bag like this is probably $5 or $6. So it was a huge discount. I bought a couple bags. The reason why it was on discount is because the expiry date, the best before date is March 15th. So a couple weeks. I bought a couple bags and I threw them in the freezer. I know in this house, this will go quite quickly. It's great for grilled cheese. It's great to add to a salad. It's great to sprinkle on scrambled eggs in the morning. So something like that is a great deal that I was willing to pay that $1.96 for the bag. But overall, a better deal is when you're looking at kind of these whole products. So this is a bar of cheese, and our favorite is cheddar here. And so oftentimes this bar of cheese is a little bit more than these bags. So this bar is 400 grams, this one's 320 grams, and the price point was a little bit better on this one. Now, what's involved is me shredding the cheese, okay? So this is gonna give me the time to shred the cheese and get a little bit more than what that 320 gram of shredded cheese was. And if you don't have the strength to grate the cheese yourself, this is a great opportunity to put it in your food processor and just shred it. Now, let's say you were so excited, you found this cheese for $4 a bar, and you just bought a couple bars because you know you're going to go through it, especially mozzarella if you're a big pizza family. Shred all that cheese and throw it in the freezer because it freezes. Okay. And then just pull it out, sprinkle it on your pizza. You can do that frozen and then just bake it and you have beautiful pizza. Okay. So I'm shredding some of this cheddar because I am going to make a little bit of a pizza as well, but I'm going to make it a little bit different by adding the cheddar cheese. Okay. What else about pantry should we talk about? Tracie, are we good there?
So I think I'm just checking quickly the questions here. I think it's also about what you enjoy. Somebody, it's not about pantry, it's more around rotation. They
Mm,
asked about a meal rotation, like how that would work. So I was thinking about that while you were shredding the cheese. And what I would probably suggest is like, it doesn't mean like Mondays are, spaghetti and meatballs. It could be maybe Mondays are meatball day. And we just did a great cooking demo on a chicken shawarma meatball with couscous. So maybe it's like coming up, you have ground meat and that's the day you're going to use that for that. And maybe Tuesday it's different kinds of soups. Um, So all kinds of different things. You have to make it be what you enjoy, because if you don't, I guarantee you that food will sit in your refrigerator or in your pantry or in your freezer, and you're just not going to eat it, and you're going to end up having to toss it. And we definitely want to reduce food waste. But I think from a
And
pantry,
and also think about this when you're doing it, think outside the box. So I mentioned breakfast for dinner, but what about like who doesn't love a soup and salad, right? Or a sandwich for dinner? I
yep,
love sandwiches. That's one of, my favorite things to have for lunch, but why not make it a little bit heartier and have it for dinner and then enjoy that salad or that soup with it? It's just, it's also very convenient, especially if you have some things in the fridge ready to go. And I think overall, when you look at your refrigerator, your pantry, and your freezer, this is what happens at my house. They go into the fridge, they look, and they're like, there's nothing to eat. There's a whole fridge full of food in there, whole fridge. It's ingredients,
yeah.
right? So they're just ingredients, and maybe not all the family members understand that those ingredients come together to create delicious food that maybe they need a little bit of guidance on. And maybe you can do that with your family and friends and kind of guide them to that, or take the time and show them how to chop a carrot and a celery and make those carrot and celery sticks to have as a snack so that there is a little bit more food in the fridge as opposed to just ingredients.
Exactly. And you know what? We're going to quickly do a quick show and tell about reading price labels. So I'm just going to go back here to our deck. Now, what you want to do, and Emily's going to talk to this slide. So we've got two price tags on broth. They're different kinds of broth, and we want to look for the unit pricing on the price stickers on the shelf so that you can make a comparison. I also did pop in, again, there's always something on sale in the grocery store. See if you can benefit from it. But Emily, for this, you want to talk about the chicken broth that we have here?
So there's two chicken broths there. The one that's 3.49 was the little bouillon cubes. So typically you're going to get about for every cube, it makes 2 to 3 cups of broth. Okay. And in a package, you could get about 6 cubes. So, a couple liters for sure that or more of broth that you're going to get. And then the other 2.99 one is a Tetra Pak of broth. So it's a liter. Okay. Now, if you take a look, that price is less in that Tetra Pak. But are you going to use that whole liter? Because once you open it, if you take a look at the packaging, it says to kind of use it up within 7 days. Some say 14. But if you're going to just open it and use a little bit and then keep it in the fridge for a month at the back of the fridge, and then in a month go, oh, yeah, I should probably use that. Again, there's that food waste and that you're not kind of keeping it at the forefront and using it. So maybe it is a little bit better for you to purchase the dried version and then use a little bit when you need it. So it's things like this that you have to take a look at. Yes, it's a better price, but are you going to use it? It has to really fit what you are going to use at home, because that's where you're going to save the money over the long term. And if you know that you need 2 cups of that 1 liter Tetra Pak and the other 2 cups you can incorporate into something else, that's great. You go ahead and you pick it up and know that you've saved yourself a little bit of money. Now, often these things do go on sale, so it would be even less. But in the moment, this was kind of the pricing. So, take that into consideration. Where the other consideration is making your own stock and saving that much more money, which we'll talk about as well.
Absolutely. And we're going to look at one more slide on pricing here. So the other great thing, and we talked about the shredded cheese and the block cheese. So a couple of things to look at. Let's look at the cheddar first. When you're buying the old cheddar, they're both the same price. They're both $8.99, but you're getting more cheese in the block cheddar, and it's 225 per 100 grams versus 281 per 100 grams. So this is where you have to decide, A, is it convenience that you're looking for? B, can you shred it yourself? Do you want to even shred it yourself? And you may be thinking, well, that's like how much am I saving if I buy the block cheddar versus the shredded? Once you buy a few of these food items and you add it all together, you could save a few dollars at the grocery store. Again, it's your choice to make if that's something that you want to do. Yogurt, we go to yogurt a lot because it's so interesting, I find yogurt, because pricing, even how the nutritional value on yogurt, it's dependent on if it's a single serve, if it's 3/4 of a cup, if it's half a cup. It's not consistent. So neither is the pricing. If you look at this tub of yogurt, it's 750 grams and it's $7.99. This 4 single serve that you're going to get, even though it's on sale and it's $4.49, it's more per 100 grams. So often I will go to the grocery store and you will look, if you look at the, price per 100 grams, you would be very surprised at what actually is the best price for something like yogurt. It's the same thing for milk. It's the same thing for juice, etc. So take a look at that. And you can also, if you can invest in a food processor or a box grater, these are great, not just for cheeses, but for vegetables, for meat, nuts. You can do so much with these tools if you invest in it. It's also if, as Emily said, let's say you have issues with your wrists, your hands, a food processor or a food chopper can really help in the kitchen so that you can do more. So there we go. We've talked about pricing. Emily, what about any other comments on that?
Well, I think that if you kind of learn the routine at your grocery store. So I had a great conversation. I was at 4 or 5 grocery stores over the last few days, and I was talking to the cashiers, and they were like, "Oh, you really got to come on Sunday night because that's when all the reduced stuff goes on." And they've actually kind of planned their week based on when they know is things like that are in the store. So I actually had picked up some great deals, which I was proud of, and they're like, "Hey, you got a great haul." So it's like kudos, you're cheering somebody on because they've saved money and you've done it at their store. So that, gives them the hope that they will pick up on some of those options as well. Later in the evening, sometimes, especially if there's prepared foods like meals, you'll find discounted, like rotisserie chicken is one of them. Okay. So what I did was I got the rotisserie chicken. I broke it up. My kids love dark meat, so I have the thighs and the drumsticks here. I shredded some of the breast. All those bones are in this broth, the stock that I made. So, which I just tasted, and it's delicious with the other veggies. So it's ready to strain out. But this is great to add to. I well, while you were talking, Tracie, I decided to start a little pizza.
Sounds
So you
good.
can you can take some of that shredded chicken and just put it on here. The naan I found in the bakery, it was 50% off. This is just a nice garlic naan. Okay. But it doesn't just have to be stuff like this that's prepared. You can actually get great deals on other proteins. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but I'm going to do this so I can get some in the oven. I had picked up some ground beef because it was on sale. So I bought the large package, which was about 3 pounds. And I cooked up 1 pound with some spices. And I'm going to put this on my pizza. Okay. But I didn't add anything kind of too spicy or anything crazy here because I want to be able to use this in different ways. This will be great in a stuffed sandwich. I could make a sauce with it. I can add it to soup. I can do so many things. It's even great. I don't know if you've tried this or not, Tracie, but it's even awesome in an omelet with a little bit of cheese, which I'm going to get.
Oh, I wouldn't say no to that. So Emily, while you top that with cheese, I am just going to talk about a little bit more about buying some prepared foods. So you know what, at the end of the night, especially the prepared food area where there's a roast chicken and they have other, roast potatoes, etc., you could get a great meal. You could repurpose those. The ready to eat soups and sauces, again, you don't even need to use the sauce as a sauce. It could be an ingredient for something else that you make. It's all about personal taste and preference. But now we're going to talk about protein because I think a lot of people are struggling protein prices and they're looking for ways to stretch their protein. So there's a secret of low and slow. This is how you cook tougher cuts of meat because that's what makes them tender. If you have a Dutch oven or if you have a slow cooker or crock pot, perfect use. of cooking a tougher cut of meat, such as a chuck roast, which is less expensive, so flavorful. Ground meat, we talk about this. We have so many recipes with ground meat. Perfect to purchase on sale, keep in your freezer. You can make everything from what Emily said, toppings for pizza to meatballs. Use it, a meatloaf, whatever it is that you'd like to make. And you can also stretch your meat. You can add beans and you can, stretch your proteins. You can add a lot of vegetables. Proteins include fish as well. You can mix in some other protein ingredients, add quinoa as a side, some other grains, and you have a complete meal. And we are going to go through an example of breaking down a piece of protein. So you have a good knife, sharp, safe. We're going to show you that. And also to invest perhaps in a vacuum sealer and a freezer, as we keep saying. So if you have the option, you have the space and the means, this keeps frozen meat, veggies, and cheeses fresher longer. So a few tips: discounted proteins like beef, pork, chicken, turkey, and fish, all the other kinds of proteins, they're still good. If they're discounted, it just means you have to have that plan to cook them. As we said, if you aren't going to cook it, then don't buy it, because then you're going to probably toss it because you won't have cooked it and it will have gone past the expiry date. We have a recipe, which I will pop in the chat while Emily is doing her demo, of a big batch of ground beef. It's calcium fortified, and we have some recipes on the website that we've already done. So I'm going to share those on how you can use them in ramen soup recipes, pizza toppings, and some other items. And the Sunday, Monday seems to be the days of the week that seem to have the best deals for reduced food items. So I am going to stop here. And Emily, I'm going to pop things in the chat while you do this demo.
Perfect. So I have lots of protein. First, I'm going to talk ground beef because you saw me. I added some to the pizza that I made, and I told you I bought that big. It's this big size, right? This kind of big container. It can be anywhere from 3 to 4 pounds. It might be overwhelming for you, but if you get it on sale, it's a great pantry freezer staple. Okay. So what I do is I usually break it up into pounds, but if you're a smaller household, maybe half a pound, 8 ounces, 250 grams is the way to go so that you can serve 1 or 2 portions. Okay. Or maybe you could just take that little bit of ground beef and make a couple of burger patties so that you have some burgers in the freezer for yourself. So there's a couple ways to extend the life of that ground beef. You can vac seal it, as Tracie said, if you have a vacuum sealer like I have back here. It's great because it really kind of keeps your ground beef and all your meats really, really nicely in the freezer. But if you don't have one, what I usually do is I overwrap it with some plastic wrap, and then I wrap it in something else, or I put it into a freezer bag or a freezer container. So that's kind of like another layer. So you could wrap this in foil and then make sure you write on it what it is so that you remember that it's 1 pound of ground beef. This one happens to be lean ground beef. And so then I can just zip my bag up, and you can write it on your bag as well. And then these go into the freezer so that I have them ready for chili. I have them for a meat sauce. I can make meatballs with them. I can make a sloppy joe with them. So there's lots of options when it comes to ground meats. Okay. Now, the other option is discounted proteins. So you go to the store and you see these lovely stickers, 20% off, 40% off. But oh my gosh, I've never bought an inside round steak. What on earth do I do with it? Well, this is what you're going to do with it. You're going to get some help. You're going to take out your phone. You're going to go on to cdnbeef.ca, so canadianbeef.ca, and this is what it looks like. Roy, I don't know if you can show an overhead of this, but it's not an app, so it's actually on a website. This is the screen. You're going to push that button that says scan here. It's going to need you to allow your camera, okay? And then what you're going to do is, look, I didn't even have to get that close. It scanned one of the packages of the UPC, right? These codes here, and then it'll bring you to the page. So if I want to go to the specific cut, which is this one. Let's see if it'll do it for me. Okay, so beef soup bones. I got a great deal. This was $6.60, okay, for over a pound of beef bones, plus 20% off. But what am I going to do with these beef bones? Well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to look here and find out how to cook it, okay? Or if I want a specific recipe, look at that. I can scroll through right in the grocery store and find the other ingredients that I need. And look, there's a beef broth for pho soup if you are so inclined. So this is an app, not an app. It's available to you online so that you can help yourself in the store so that when you see these great deals, you know what to go home and do with it, okay? I'm not saying you have to go home right away and do it, but you can go home in the freezer and then you can research a little bit more as well, okay? Because there are going to be these great deals of protein that you're going to get in the store. And if you're looking for a specific Canadian beef, this is the other thing you're going to look for, that beautiful red maple leaf, okay? And this one happens to be a Canada AAA beef. So it can get in different cuts. Here's a beef top sirloin. And these little medallions are fabulous. They're nice and lean. If, again, you have a smaller household, this is a perfect little portion for 2 people, okay? All right, so what about those bigger roasts that you see that are on sale? Those are a deal too, but maybe you don't need the whole roast. Maybe you want to do a few other things. So this is a sirloin tip oven roast, which is great to pop in the oven. And think about it. I'm going to bring this home. I'm going to make a beautiful roast, but do I need all this beef tonight? Well, maybe not, but I can freeze it after it's been cooked. So I can slice it for sandwiches. I can dice it up for a beautiful beef barley soup, which would be absolutely delicious in this weather. You could add it to stir fries. You could sprinkle it on top of pizza or put it in a burrito. So there's lots of options when you buy these larger cuts across the board when it comes to protein because it gives you options to do other things. But I want to do something a little bit quicker for tomorrow night's dinner. I'm going to roast some, but I also want some quick little steaks. So I'm going to make my own fast fry steaks. So all I'm going to do is kind of slice some of my roast here. And it doesn't have to be super, super thin, okay? But thin enough that I'm going to pound it to tenderize it, okay? So if you have a meat mallet, that's perfect. So I'm just going to put this here and pull out my meat mallet. Okay, and then just pound it out. This is going to make a little bit of noise, just like that. Okay, and here's where some other can kind of, maybe you got a deal on a sauce or a marinade to make it a little bit quicker. You can use a store-bought sauce or marinade or a salad dressing, okay, as a quick little marinade. Now, to add a little bit more tenderness, you can also grab yourself a fork and just go in. And this will also help get that marinade all the way through, okay? So I'm doing a little bit of meal planning right in front of you. So tomorrow night, I know it's not a full house, so I don't need a whole roast for tomorrow night. I just need a little bit. And I'm going to take this and put it in a resealable bag and just add a little bit of marinade to it, okay? Now I could also take this and cut it into stir fry strips if I wanted to make a stir fry. I would still take the time to marinate it as well. And then I could also actually freeze this in the marinade if I wanted to, okay? So it just depends on what you want to use. I'm going to use a little bit of a teriyaki marinade that I had in the fridge and just put some in there. And then I'm just going to massage it in the bag and put it in the fridge for tomorrow night. I have dinner for tomorrow night, Tracie. You want to come over?
I would love to come over. I love it when when Emily cooks for I get to have Emily's cooking once in a while. So I'm gonna just quickly share right while you're doing that because people I did put it in the chat, but if you want to find that QR that to do the QR code, it's canadianbeef.ca. You just scan it, you would see it here on top of the package. Then you would literally have the type come up, or you can just get on there. Let's say you're like, I'm feeling like a veal steak, or sorry, a beef steak. Then you would just get on, you could look for all the different kinds of recipes. And what would happen is you would get the information on how to cook it, nutrition, food safety, tips, and recipes. So there's over 70 cuts of beef that you can look into. So very much a handy tool to have. And you can do that in your while you're grocery shopping or while you're planning. So, Emily, what are you doing now?
Well, I thought I'd get the roast ready to put in the oven.
I'll be over soon. Okay, let's go ahead and do it. All right. So, this is again, you can cut up your own protein and then you can see if you're comfortable. If you're not, you can always ask your butcher. You can ask the butcher behind the meat counter in the grocery store to see if that they would be able to do it for you. Some will.
Pantry staple, spices.
There you go.
And it literally could be this is easy, guys, okay? I'm just putting a little bit of a dry rub on the roast, and then I'm going to oven sear it at 450 degrees, so nice and high. Then I'm going to turn it down nice and low at 275 and let it do its job as it should in the oven. And then, you know what's important to get your proteins cooked properly so that you're not kind of worried about overcooking or wasting any of that protein? It's just a little thermometer. Okay. So that will, again, across the board, you won't have to worry about, oh, I overcooked something or am I undercooking it? You can check the temperature with a digital read thermometer so that you can feel comfortable in knowing that everything that you're cooking is cooked properly so that you get the most juiciest roast, that you get the perfectly cooked steak, whatever you're cooking, your hamburgers, everything will be cooked beautifully. And you don't have to worry about anything being overcooked or too tough because you've taken the time to have that thermometer check everything.
Sounds good. All right. So we have had a lot, and I know we've gone over time. So thank you for everyone who's still with us. We have so many questions, and I think a lot of it we've answered. I'm just looking here really quickly to see if there's a last minute item. Somebody just asked, can you freeze any cheese?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Um, I have frozen pretty much every kind of cheese. What happens is, and this happens with anything that you freeze, the texture changes, right? When you take it out. So most often it's best to be used cooked for cooking. So I've frozen brie, but I've chopped it up and then I've made a delicious like cheese sauce for pasta and baked it. So I've, stirred it in with a little bit of a milk and flour bechamel, and then it's a beautiful cheese sauce and the brie's cooked in with it. So just because of the fat in the cheeses as it varies, so the way the freezer affects the texture is a little bit different. So I wouldn't put in cheese and then take it out to take a bite because you will definitely taste the texture difference. It'll still be it'll still be delicious. It's just the texture won't be kind of what you originally had as the fresh cheese.
And the last point, so people are asking questions about, carrot peels and tops, et cetera, and leaves that they want to, celery leaves they want to freeze. It's just like any produce and fruit. You need to wash it because they're
Yes.
worried about pesticides. If you have a brush to scrub, you can scrub it, wash it, dry it, and freeze it, and then you can make the stock, which is really what the best parts are. Those are all the best parts that make the most delicious stock and nutritious. And what is Emily doing? She's going to show us.
I'm gonna strain the
She's going to
stock to show
she's
you
going to
what.
show.
So, and by the way, those beef bones will make a beautiful beef stock. I would roast the bones first to
Yes.
pull out lots of flavor, and then I would definitely um, do a nice. You could even put the bones in the slow cooker and then have a wonderful flavored broth. So here are all like the bones here. There's still some meat. So once this cools, what I like to do, and I do this with any broth that I make, a protein broth, is I'll take this meat and just shred it and add it into the soup so that I have a beautiful, this could be a beautiful chicken noodle soup. If you're doing a bone stock, you can do a beautiful beef barley later and have the bits of the meat that are still on the bones in there. It's absolutely delicious. This is what my broth looks like. And you can see those little bits of herbs in there. That's the thyme. That's that fresh thyme that I put in there. And I just literally, I threw in the whole fresh stock of thyme. I didn't take it off. I put it all in because once you strain it, those little stems, I don't know if you can see that little stem, they remain, but all the leaves, the tender leaves are in there for lots of great flavor. It has a great color too, as well, which is nice.
Absolutely. So we are going to wrap up. We've had so much information that we've shared. Emily, thank you so much. I'm just going to share the last screen here. So this was all about Eat Well on a Budget. We are working to provide you with, tips and strategies and resources and tools to help making things a little bit more interesting and hopefully a little bit more delicious and affordable. So there you go. We want to share. We have an excellent webinar coming up March 4th, Protein and Fragility, what you need to know. We also, if you are in Winnipeg, we have an event on what your bone health. That is March 12th, Bone Health and You. All of that is at osteoporosis.ca/event. You can also use our nutrient calculator to help figure out how much of the nutrients you're getting on a daily basis from the foods that you consume. We have webinar replays on the OC Replay podcast, so much. Thank you to our partner, Canada Beef, for helping us, support us in putting out programming like this. And of course, to our friend Emily Richards, we appreciate that. Make sure that you are subscribed to our newsletter. So much information on the website. We're on Instagram and Facebook. And I know you just pulled out the pizza, Emily. I know it looks great. Thank you so much. We will see you again. There's more to be shared. Thank you, Emily. Have a great one, everyone.
Thanks,
Take
everybody. Thanks,
care. Bye-bye.
Tracie. Eat well.